War debts finance also produces cultural consequences that echo across society for many years. A nation that experiences heavy financial loss during war often develops a cautious attitude toward economic risk. People become more protective of their savings. Banks tighten their lending rules. Businesses delay expansion because they fear unstable conditions. This slow behavior spreads across markets. The entire economy begins moving with hesitation. This hesitation lowers productivity and prevents rapid recovery. In this way, war debts do not only weigh on the government but also influence the behavior of every citizen and institution. A key part of war debts finance is understanding how conflict disrupts supply chains. When shipping routes and production facilities are damaged, nations must import goods at higher cost. Factories require raw materials that become more expensive. Energy prices increase because fuel routes are threatened. These rising costs spread to every product and every service. Inflation grows and economic balance weakens. To compensate, governments borrow more money. Each new loan adds to the long-term burden and creates another layer of complexity. Thus, war finances do not stay limited to military spending but enter every corner of the national economy. The relationship between war debts and labor markets is also important. When many workers die or migrate, the workforce shrinks. Fewer workers means slower industrial output. The government must invest more in training new workers or attracting labor from other regions. These investments add new financial obligations which connect directly to the existing debt burden. When labor markets weaken, production falls and exports decline. A decline in exports reduces foreign currency income, which makes debt repayment harder. These cycles often last for decades and sometimes shape entire generations. Another layer of war debt finance appears in currency valuation. As nations borrow huge sums, international confidence may weaken. Foreign investors watch carefully whether a nation can repay its loans. If confidence drops, the national currency loses value. When currency value falls, the cost of foreign goods rises. This further increases inflation. As inflation rises, domestic saving loses power. People buy fewer products, which slows economic activity. A slower economy produces less tax income. Lower tax income makes debt repayment more difficult. So a small shift in currency value can produce a long chain of economic consequences. War debts also influence education and human capital. A nation that faces heavy financial burden often reduces investment in schools, universities, and research institutions. These cuts weaken the long-term skill level of the population. Without strong education, the workforce becomes less innovative. A less innovative workforce produces slower growth. Slower growth weakens national income. Weak income makes debt repayment difficult. So every cut has a silent long-term consequence. Decisions made during financial stress shape national development for many years. Another important aspect is how businesses respond to war-induced debt pressure. Private companies often face uncertainty after conflict. They lose access to foreign markets. Some lose factories or logistical systems. Others lose trained workers. To survive, they need loans. But banks also feel risk and hesitate. This creates a credit shortage. Without access to loans, businesses cannot expand. Without expansion, economic recovery slows. Without recovery, governments cannot collect enough revenue. And without revenue, debt remains heavy. War debts finance is therefore not only a government problem but a national ecosystem issue. War also changes consumer behavior. People who live through conflict become more cautious in their spending. They avoid luxury items. They focus on basic needs. This cautious attitude slows retail markets. Slower retail reduces business profits. Lower profits reduce tax income. Governments under pressure must borrow again or cut spending further. Each cut reduces economic activity more. The cycle becomes a circle that requires strategic planning to escape. Another dimension is international political pressure. When a nation owes money to foreign governments, it may face conditions related to politics, military decisions, trade routes, or diplomatic behavior. Debt becomes a tool of influence. Some powerful nations use financial obligations to shape the decisions of others. This dynamic complicates foreign policy. A nation that wants to maintain sovereignty must balance its debt obligations with its political principles. This balance requires careful negotiation and often patience. War debts finance also involves generational transfer. The people who borrow money during war are not always the people who repay it. Often the next generation carries the burden. Children grow up in an economy shaped by decisions made long before they were born. They enter schools that suffered from budget cuts. They live in cities still recovering from physical damage. They work in economies slowed by long-term obligations. Their future taxes are used to pay for past conflicts. This generational transfer shows how powerful and lasting war debts can be. Environmental factors also add financial pressure. Many wars damage farmland, rivers, forests, and natural resources. Rebuilding the environment requires huge investment. Water systems must be restored. Contaminated soil must be cleaned. Damaged forests must be replanted. These investments are essential for long-term health of the land, but they also require major spending. So rebuilding nature becomes another financial obligation tied to war debts. International trade agreements are also shaped by war debts. A nation under pressure may agree to trade terms that are less profitable just to secure short-term financial assistance. This creates long-term disadvantage. When a nation sells key resources at low prices or accepts foreign control over certain industries, it limits its own economic independence. These decisions may seem necessary during crisis, but their long-term effects can continue for generations. War debts finance also interacts with national identity. Citizens sometimes connect economic suffering with national pride or national pain. Some think that paying off debts is a symbol of strength. Others believe the country should refuse unfair obligations. These cultural interpretations shape political debates. Political debates influence policy. Policy influences economic decisions. Economic decisions shape debt strategies. So even cultural emotions become part of financial planning. Psychology plays a role even in investment decisions. After war, many citizens avoid risk. They save money instead of investing. They hesitate to start businesses. Banks hesitate to lend. Investors hesitate to trust long-term projects. This creates a slow, cautious economy. A slow economy collects less tax. Low taxes make debt repayment difficult. Once again, the debt cycle strengthens itself. Some nations turn to innovation during financial hardship. They create new industries and invest in technology to recover faster. Innovation can transform an economy and create new revenue streams. But innovation requires stability, education, and investment. Without these elements, innovation cannot flourish. So a nation must choose between short-term survival and long-term transformation. This choice shapes how war debts evolve. In the context of global finance, war debts also change alliances. Nations that lend money become stakeholders in the stability of those they support. They monitor reforms, encourage stability, and sometimes intervene in internal affairs. Borrowing nations must cooperate to maintain trust. This dynamic reshapes diplomatic relationships and creates new patterns of cooperation or tension. In this sense, war debts finance extends far beyond economics and enters the realm of global strategy. Although war debts create heavy burdens, some nations have turned them into opportunities for structural reform. Financial crisis sometimes forces governments to modernize institutions, reduce corruption, and improve transparency. When successful, these reforms create a more resilient economy. A strong economy manages debts more easily. So crisis becomes a catalyst for transformation. However, if reforms fail, the nation sinks deeper into instability and debt becomes overwhelming. The presence of war debts also affects cultural production. Art, literature, and public memory often focus on themes of loss, resilience, sacrifice, and recovery. These cultural works shape public psychology and collective identity. They influence how society views responsibility, pain, and the future. Even these emotional expressions affect economic behavior because confidence and hope are essential for investment and recovery. Lastly, war debts finance shows the delicate connection between conflict and development. Every nation must understand that war does not end when the fighting stops. The financial shadow remains. It enters schools, hospitals, roads, markets, and homes. It affects future generations and international relations. It shapes culture and politics. It determines how fast or how slowly a nation can rise again.